Hi, this is Tom Milburn with Milburn Motorsports. We had some requests on how we got into racing, and it kind of started with me, and the boys have picked it up. Sean and Danny have picked up the bug along on the way. So we decided that we were going to do this little film today to kind of give you a little insight to how a lot of people get into motorsports. How did I get into motorsports and where did it all start? Well, when I was a young guy, we didn't have video games. There was only like 3 TV stations. I'm not that old, but I lived in the country. We didn't get that many stations. So being outside and being really active, and when we did get TV stations that were interesting, it was sports. Car racing was so exciting when we were a kid that it put the bug in me right away. So I went from a lot of guys my age, you know, from mini bikes to dirt bikes to getting the keys to dad's car to hot rodding your own car. And so I've been in it my whole life, as in pitting for other crews because I couldn't afford it. My brother's friends had a sprint car of all things. So I just felt totally privileged that I could be their gopher just to get that experience, and that was 40 years ago, and ever since I've been dabbling, and I would say maybe about 25 years ago is when I really started getting involved. What was my first race car and why did I pick it? I had lots of sports cars and things like that, like most guys, once they get their driver's license, get in dad's car and bombing around. But the real race car was when I had my kids, actually. Danny and Sean were born, and I decided that it was lousy timing, but I'm going to get my own race car. So I bought a stock car. I bought a 73 Monte Carlo, and I started running dirt track. We had a little local track. It looked like a lot of fun. It wasn't expensive, as in, you could buy an old jalopy. And I totally dug drifting a big, huge car around a dirt track. So I think officially the real first race car was my 73 Monte Carlo. How many race cars have I had and what were they? I actually haven't had a lot of race cars. I had the Monte Carlo. Then I was approached by a friend of mine who ran a Honda in NASA with Honda Challenge, and I thought that was going to be really easy. I'm like, oh, a little Honda 4-cylinder. I thought it would be an easy transition, so I teamed up with them. We had what was it, a Civic and an Integra, and so we picked up these 2 cars pretty cheap, and I'm pretty handy, and so I did a lot of the welding. I welded in the roll cages in these cars, and I'd say that was our first 2 cars, were the Civic and the Integra, and we drove a few different cars along the way. They weren't really ours. I became an instructor for NASA, so that gave me some good time. I loved instructing, and then I bought the RSX that we have today that you have probably seen in our other videos. That's been a really good car for us. How did I become a part of U.S. Touring Cars? My partner that I had, Gordon, his prior partner was with the U.S. Touring Car, and so I got introduced to them. I was a mediocre driver, as in I drove a car well, but I didn't have that killer instinct to get in the car to win. But they said I had what it took to try and do real competitive driving. So they allowed me to add in on a couple of races. I paid my entry fee. They put me in the back. I loved it. I absolutely loved the racing tempo. When you go out just for your track days, there's a certain tempo that you do, but when you're racing, the tempo is extreme. And you know, some people get it, that they feel at home in a race car doing this stuff. I love to be able to, you know, knock off a good lap and be in control out of a car that's on the edge of control. And I was just hooked. And so I just went from there. That was probably 20 years ago. I started with U.S. Touring Car, and I've grown. How much time and dedication does it take to race? That's a big one. It matters what you want out of it. When I first started, I didn't put a lot into it. We got the Civic and the Integra, which were bulletproof cars, which didn't take a lot of maintenance. You know, your upfront money is probably the hugest part, and then your mistakes. You know, you break the car, you wreck the car. Everybody has an off sooner or later. You do something like that, and then that's when you have to say, is this something I want to keep doing? And once you do that, you do, like anything in your life that is important to you, even going on vacation, people schedule vacations, right? Well, racing is, you got to schedule your time to race. You have to schedule your time to work on the car. So there are different dedication levels. Some people are really, really into it, so they spend hours working out their cars and getting them perfect. And then there was me that had to family and all that, where I you know, didn't put as much time in, but you do have to dedicate some time. And I would do all my work as fast as I could in a short amount of time. So if I ran into any problems, I'd still have time before race day. Wow, the worst racing moment I personally had. I came off the track in our Civic, turn 8 in Thunder Hill. I actually have two that are a tie. I'll give you both. They told me to drive the car full speed, don't lift, and hit the apex hard. The car didn't like it. It went from going straight to turning around backwards in about a millisecond. I came flying off the track, totally out of control, and the car I didn't hit anything, but it smashed a few things under the car, tore the tires off the rims, you know, that kind of thing. I'd say second was a very similar. It was turn 9. A guy got into the back of me going over the top of the hill, and it was all over. It was everything I could do to not roll the car. Once I came off track, I was going sideways. I sawed the wheel as hard as I could. I never lifted. I kept bumping the clutch to make sure the rims weren't biting into the dirt. Twice it came up on its side and never went over. That was really hairy. Both those were severe moments, and they happened. Memorable. Oh, God. The best and memorable moment. Probably your first win. Yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes people, it comes to really early, right? They get their first win pretty early. I had to work at it for a while. I was a timid driver, and I had to learn to, you know, really get on that wheel and drive hard. And one day, you know, my competition was pushing too hard. They slid off the track. I took advantage of that, got my first win, and that was really exciting. I go, holy smokes! You know, at some point you're gonna get, you know, you're gonna go, I belong here now, right? If you race a lot and you just are last every single time, it can be very discouraging. You get that first win, that's pretty exciting.
So this was a question from the comments. Tell us a bit more about the DC5, the Acura RSX. So how did you get that car, and how did it come to be from where it started to where it is now?
Okay, how did I get the DC5 and how did it get to where it is now? Funny story. My Integra had been smashed a few times, and my last race in that car was at World Challenge race, and I hit an apex really hard and it broke the frame. So I needed a new car. A friend I know says, hey, listen, a guy owed me some money and gave me this car. He says, I don't want it. Do you want it? And I'm saying, sure. So he showed it to me, and it was the RSX. It had no doors, no hatch, no seats. It was missing a ton of parts. It was a theft return. They had bought it off an auction. It just had wheels, engine, and a transmission. I think the steering wheel was still there. And to me, that was the perfect car. I'm like, okay, I like Integras. So that's how we started with that car. He gave me the car. We were going to team up together. All I had to do was build it. So I put a roll cage in it. I built the roll cage in the car. And the motor was in great shape. So I had to find doors and hatches and stuff like that and put the car together. It was horrible. It was a horrible car. When they come from the factory, they have a complete understeer issue, which means when you turn the steering wheel, the car likes to go straight. So anything under 60 miles an hour, you turn the steering wheel, it turned great. Anything over 60, this became useless, right? And I had a heck of a time getting that car to perform. But I had put some time into it, and lots of people told me, you're wasting your time, get rid of it, start with a new car. And that just sparked my challenge part of me. I'm like, I can get this. So I did some studying, and basically I took everything that everyone told me to do, and I did the absolute reverse, because I figured if they did all these things, like tightening the suspension and making all these changes, and it didn't work, they were obviously going in the wrong direction. So I changed up a little bit. I softened the suspension a ton. I put a lot of extra caster in the car, and typical camber and things like that. I put on a softer rebound and all this stuff. I just softened the car up and made it pliable, and lo and behold, it started to work. And I knew I was headed in the right direction, and it's come along, where the K20 motor ended up being very expensive, and not that it wasn't reliable, but you just had to be so mean to it to stay competitive that we went to a K24, which is less expensive, gave us the same kind of performance, and we didn't have to be so mean to it. So that's where we are now. We're with a K24, highly modified car compared to what it was from the factory, as in all the little nuances that we did to the car to give it great manners. And now it's an absolute gem to drive. Anybody can drive it. It's an absolute gentleman.
Is there any other information you want to share with everyone else out there?
Yeah, don't be afraid. There's lots of venues now, track day venues, to come out and put your car on the track. We have track time here that in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. If you want to come out and join us with track time, you can see what it's like. Miatas are a good way to get into the sport. There are tons of them out there that are already prepped, guys that have graduated to better cars or newer cars. They're inexpensive, they're the cheapest way, and if you can drive a Miata well, you can drive anything well. It's a great way to learn. And you don't have to do a whole season, right? Do 2 or 3 races, or go to NASA and get your competitive license by going through their program. And it's very doable. Don't be afraid. It is a little expensive. It's just like I was saying earlier, the dedication is you have to work. I worked overtime. I said, okay, this overtime I'm working is the money I'm using towards my hobby. So I had to do it like that. Well, thanks for joining us. Letting me jabber away about some of my experiences. If you enjoyed this, give us a thumbs up. Join our site. Sean's been doing a great job of keeping up on it. If you have any comments, put them down, If you have any things that you would like to for us to venture into, look into, we'd love to do it for you. If there's something you'd like us to talk about, we'll talk about it. We have different vehicles that we can access. There's a type of car that you want to take a good look at. We have lots of friends with race cars that we can give you a good look at different cars too. So you know, don't be afraid to smash on that like button and subscribe, and we'll try and give you some content that's worthy watching.